Welcome to the Triple D Podcast, Donuts, Disability, and Discourse, where host Michael Leiner talks to the best in the business about community, impact, business, and donuts. Here's your host, Michael Leiner.
What's up, Internet? We've got a triple dip version of the Triple D Podcast today.
It's insane. There's a lot going on.
There's so much going on here. We got Facebook. We got TikTok. We got my podcast shooting here. I'm just like I'm like a regular, what's his name?
Gary V. You are Gary V.
I am Gary V.
You know, though, I think you're more of a combination of Gary V and Ron Burgundy.
I like that one. Did you see the Tom Brady roast?
I did.
Yeah. I did. So this is exciting. Let me introduce this bald, bearded man that came to join me here. This is one of my good friends and an incredible attorney, Alan Tittle. Say hello, Alan.
Hello. And, you know, I know you go by the Triple D. I prefer the Triple B. Bald, bearded and beautiful.
And beautiful.
That's right.
That's how I like my women.
Yeah.
Triple B. You got all three Bs?
That's right.
I wanted to tell you, so you know how we every year for the last several years, Alan and I have been the MCs of the famed Sandusky donut eating contest.
Donut Fest.
Donut Fest is what it's called. And I was in Nashville this last week, and somebody was just talking. I'm at a table. I'm not even involved in the conversation. I overhear people talking about professional eaters. And they literally just started randomly talking about Molly, Skylar, and Thunder Dan Kennedy, the winners. And they had, without realizing it was you and me, watched the videos of that. It was like a couple years ago when Molly set the world record for most donuts eating.
That's insane. First of all, it's Killer Kennedy.
Killer Kennedy. Damn, I thought it was... It's Thunder Dan Marley, Killer Dan Kennedy.
That's right. You get the name right. And because I mispronounced Molly's last name the first time we ever did it.
Schuler? You can call her Schuler? It's Skylar.
It's, in my defense, it's spelled a little funky.
Yeah.
But, you know, they're impressive athletes. I think Molly had
Open that gullet. That's your favorite thing to say.
Yeah.
Let her open that gullet.
That's right. And, you know, donut eating contests or any competitive eating contest, it's a skill.
It's a skill.
I
don't have it. You don't have it. It sticks on us. Those two, it just kind of drops right through. But, I'm really excited that we're doing this, Alan, because we've got a lot of questions that have been collected, and people are going to be submitting their questions live. I believe we're already getting some questions live from the audience about the interplay between what you do and what I do. Why don't you just quickly tell people about your practice, Tittle Perlmuter, so they can understand why I would bring you on.
Yeah, so we're a catastrophic injury law firm, which means we do a lot of medical malpractice, we do a lot of nursing home neglect, and we do things like car crashes or maybe even a premise liability case. And so, you know, anytime the average Joe is injured, they're calling me or they're calling you.
That's true. They're probably calling you if they're smart, and they're probably calling me if their head's not a couple of screws are loose. But
fair assessment.
Yes. Fair assessment. I also want to make sure to give a shout out to our sponsor here on the Triple D podcast, Jack Frost Donuts, which has graced us with some delicious donuts today. Alan, which donut did you grab to enjoy with me here?
I don't know. There's got some
cherry
frosting.
Middle.
It's got some, you know, a red flavored jelly. It could be cherry, could be strawberry. No one knows. We'll figure it out.
And I've just got the maple glazed here, it looks like, so I'm excited to bite into this as we get going. Do we have any questions that we can start answering?
Yes, we do. And for everyone that is actually watching the live or watching the podcast, this is Katie, marketing director and producer of the podcast. So I'm going to be monitoring all of our questions live. So we do have one from TikTok. Let me pull it up here. So this is from NY Flair. He says, question, I am out on short-term disability. Sorry, we're getting some requests for people to join. We're not accepting anyone joining the live, guys. I'm out on short-term disability. I consulted an attorney about WC.
Workers' compensation.
He said I should handle it on my own.
Well, I would want to know which claim they said that you should handle on your own. A workers' comp claim, I will tell you, I'm not sure exactly what state you're in, although from the first couple letters in your name, I'm assuming maybe you're from the state of New York. I've never really heard of anybody. Have you ever heard of anybody being advised to handle a workers' compensation claim on your own? That's one that's very litigation heavy and generally involves an attorney. Now, if your employer is already paying you benefits and not really fighting you on any medical treatment that you need, I can contemplate why it maybe is a claim that you wouldn't need by yourself. But generally speaking, here in Ohio, when somebody gets injured at work, they do find their way to an attorney to help them through the process. So if there's additional clarification or information that you can give, I would be happy to try and give you a clearer answer.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you got a potential workers' compensation claim, you need to consult with a lawyer. Anytime my office gets a call, I make sure to refer them to a workers' compensation lawyer that knows what they're doing. Not only are there potential, medical bills to be paid, but there are potential awards, at least here in Ohio, temporary partial disability, and there's a monetary amount that is associated with the workplace injury. So the bottom line is this: I don't think anyone should be handling any type of legal issue by themselves without at least consulting with a lawyer who really focuses on that area of law first.
That doesn't mean that you need to necessarily retain and hire a lawyer. I will tell you, I take good pride in this, and I know Alan takes good pride in this as well. If somebody comes to me with a case or a situation where I don't think they need the services of an attorney, I'm happy to say to them, I think you could just do X, Y, and Z, and you don't really need my help. Don't pay me if I'm not really going to have to do anything. I know you do the same thing. But the good thing is that, whether you're talking about a workers' compensation claim or a short-term disability claim, I would imagine any attorney that you would consult with would probably be working on contingency anyways and would offer you a free consultation. I also want to make sure this seems like a good place to insert into the conversation one of the kind of limitations of this conversation. So as you guys know, if you're tuning in on any of my channels, if you're one of my followers, I have a nationwide Social Security disability practice. It is a federal benefit. It means that the law is same whether you're down the street in Cleveland, Ohio, where I am, if you're in Miami, Florida, if you're in Denver, Colorado. It doesn't matter where you are. I can answer your questions. It's the same process. Medical malpractice claims, personal injury claims, workers' compensation claims, these are all state-specific areas. And so we are happy to give general advice and try to answer your questions, but nothing that you would ask us about those practice areas should be taken as legal advice here today. I think it's important that you maybe ask a question, garner some general information, and we would be glad to, if it's not something that Alan or I can handle, link you with somebody in your part of the country who can do a better job of answering a question in a more specific degree. Would you agree with that, Alan?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're just going to be answering general questions. We can't get into any specific factual scenarios. We can't give any legal advice. But the bottom line is this: if that gentleman needs a workers' compensation lawyer in New York, we know someone. So, after this is done, we're happy to sort of hook you up or link you up with the right people.
Yeah. So if you would like that, just send us a direct message, and we'll get you where you need to go. Do we have any other questions in here?
We do have some more questions.
All right.
And I also wanted to mention, I'm seeing we're getting a ton of messages, sent in direct messages. So if that's a question, make sure you're commenting the question on the live. We will be looking at the direct messages after the live, though. So if there's something you want answered here, make sure you're commenting it. But the next question is, how long do you have to work to build your credits back up to the 40 credits to be able to file for SSD?
Great question. So you can earn four work credits from Social Security in any calendar year. You don't necessarily even have to work the full year to earn your 4 credits. One credit is equivalent to a certain amount of money. It's roughly about $1,500. For every $1,500 in your earnings that you're paying taxes on, you earn 1/4 of coverage. Now, I want to correct one part of the question. you don't have to have 40 quarters to be eligible for SSD benefits. You have to have earned 20 quarters in the previous 40 quarters. So generally what it breaks down to is you must have paid into Social Security for 5 of the 10 years immediately prior to becoming disabled. But I hope that answers the question.
Okay, and we actually have a question here from Facebook. This is a little bit of a fun question, not so much law related, but Jared on Facebook wants to know, what is your favorite donut? So you both can answer that one.
Jared? How does Jared spell his name by any chance?
I'm guessing you might know this, Jared. Jerod.
It's Alan's brother.
Yeah.
Jared, we told you to put the computer away.
Right. Who, by the way,
is the organizer of the Sandusky Donut Fest. So, Alan, why don't you tell us what your favorite donut is?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a donut connoisseur, and I think in order to really judge a place by their donuts, you got to go with the old-fashioned glazed donut. I think that is what really sets a donut place apart from the fancy donuts. Everyone can make these fancy donuts, but the bottom line is this: how good you're glazed. So I'm a big fan of just the old-fashioned glazed, but, you know, I'm kind of a boring guy.
You are a very boring guy. I am proud to say that my favorite donut is actually the kind that I have in front of me. It's very sweet donut, which kind of stops me from eating too much of it. I love the taste of it, but a couple bites and I'm good. A maple glazed donut. At Jack Frost, they like to decorate it with a bit of a rich whipped cream topping on it, which is really good. So I would say what we have right here is a great sampling, for me at least, of my favorite type of donut. Thank you for that question, Jared. And by the way, you owe us both money.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
That's true.
Okay, we have another question. This one's coming in from our TikTok. This is, if my carpal tunnel prevents me from working, how hard is it to apply and get SSD?
Sure. So I will answer this the best way, basically the way that I answer anytime somebody sends me or names a diagnosis and asks how hard it is to get disability benefits. I know I just shot a video recently where I put in, if you can't use your hands, you can't work. And that's very true. But carpal tunnel is not carpal tunnel. There is mild pain, mild carpal tunnel syndrome. There's severe carpal tunnel syndrome. We need to know more. I want to know how it's affecting you, what you can do, what you can't do. What is the diagnostic evidence that your doctors have done? What is that showing? And what are the medical opinions that we have? Are your doctors saying that you can only use your hands very little? I will tell you that if you can, only use your hands for less than a third of the workday, it's extremely difficult to do any jobs that exist in the entire country. If you're able to use your hands a little bit more than that, there's many jobs that can still be done. Most work, in fact, can still be done. So it really depends on the severity of your condition. If you would like to speak to us about it, send us a DM. We'd be happy to look at the diagnostic evidence that you have and give you a better opinion.
All right, and we do want to remind everyone we are taking live questions. Make sure that you are putting those in the comments here, either on the TikTok Live or on our Facebook Live. Anything that you send us a message about, we'll check out later, but we can't answer it live here unless you comment it. We also did gather some questions, when we were promoting that we were doing this live. So I'm just going to ask you a couple of these, and this is kind of where you guys go together. So the first one that was submitted is, can I apply for Social Security after I win a personal injury case?
Absolutely. And you can apply for Social Security disability at any time that you aren't earning more than $1,550 per month at work. So whether it's after you settle a personal injury claim, right after you had a personal injury, if you have an injury that would keep you from being able to work for 12 months or more, and you are not earning $1,550 per month, you can apply for Social Security. Let me ask you, Alan, is there any specific advice that you give your clients who have a personal injury or something else that they're coming to your office for about the right time to apply for disability, or is that a question you more would deflect to me?
Look, generally I deflect that to you. Here's how I explain to folks personal injury claims. Pretend your claim, your case is a table, is a kitchen table. your case should only be one tiny corner of your life. And so what that means is there's no guarantee in any personal injury cases. There's no guarantee in any medical malpractice cases, which means you got to figure out a way to live your life while this case is pending for 1, 2, 3, 4 years down the road. So if you can't put food on the table, and you can't work, sometimes you got to apply for disability, and that's where we work together and refer clients back and forth.
Let me ask you a question, Alan. And you kind of talked about a wide range of timelines, and I'm sure that it really depends on what the injury is and so many other factors. But I imagine a common question you get is, how long will my case take? A different question that I want to ask you is, what are the factors that go into how long a personal injury case takes?
Sure. So, number one, there's always an investigation phase of a case. So the first phase is we got to gather medical records, we got to gather witness statements, we got to gather the facts to see what really happened. So that's step one. Generally, that takes a few months. These medical record providers, they take forever to get us the medical records. Step two is, all right, once we've investigated and determined there is a case to proceed, is that a case that can be resolved potentially pre-suit, meaning without a lawsuit, or does a lawsuit need to be filed? If a case can be settled without a lawsuit, obviously those cases are much quicker. We're talking a timeline of, 6 months to a year. If a lawsuit has to be filed, though, that's where things can get lengthy. Now, the Supreme Court has set forth some guidelines that says trial courts should try to get a trial set within 2 years from the date of filing. But the reality is sometimes that doesn't happen. There's continuances, there's things that occur in cases that just take forever. So I always say, 1 to 3 years and hopefully less, but you want to prepare for the worst.
Yeah. And it's, probably the most common question that we get from clients in a disability case, again, is how long is it going to take? It's a little more streamlined, but there, without question, are several factors that go into it. How cooperative are your medical providers? Who is the adjudicator that's assigned to your case? Because, adjudicator John can take a lot longer than adjudicator Jane, depending on how many cases they have on their desk and, frankly, how hard that government employee wants to work, where in the country they're located. Which probably has a lot to do with the number of people that are on an adjudication team, but geography plays a big role in it. So, the length of time that a case takes really varies, but I think when you break it down further, it depends on so many other factors that really are outside of the hands of both me as your attorney and you as the person applying for disability benefits.
Well, let me ask you this. Say someone gets denied sort of the first go around.
Yeah.
Tell me, generally speaking, all sort of the factors that go into play once that first denial happens in terms of the length of time.
Sure. So first thing that I will tell you, when somebody receives an initial denial of Social Security benefits, the next step is to file an appeal, which is called reconsideration. Okay. Again, like I was describing before, how long it takes Social Security to evaluate that reconsideration determination and even the wait time for hearing after that varies widely depending on where you are in the country. But what I think people should really take away from this is if you do receive that initial denial, you're probably going to have a case that's going to end up being heard by a judge. The statistics that Social Security puts out every year, and we're constantly updating people, shooting videos about this, are that 10% or less of reconsideration claims are approved. It's almost a rubber stamp denial after that initial stage. So if you do receive an initial denial, fasten your seatbelt because it's probably going to be another year and a half, depending on where you are in the country, sometimes longer, until you have your best chance of an approval. But the same factors apply. Who is the adjudicator at the reconsideration? If it gets to a hearing level, who is the judge? Where in the country are you? Because there's different hearing offices that Social Security have with different docket lengths. Social Security, I was in a very small group of people who met with the Commissioner of Social Security last week in Nashville. This was just a small meeting room like this. And what the Commissioner was saying is they are implementing a lot of things to try and shift cases around the country where, we've talked about how if you're in Maryland, if you're in Florida State, if you're in Wisconsin, if you're in a couple other parts of the country, the wait time for an initial decision and a reconsideration decision is unreasonably long. So there's other parts of the country where cases move a little bit quicker. They've got more appropriate staffing, and those states are stepping up. The state of Kentucky is pulling cases from Maryland right now and reviewing decisions for them to try and make it so people in Maryland get a decision a little bit quicker. The state of Iowa, another really good DDS, they're pulling cases from Wisconsin now. That's great news if you live in Wisconsin or Maryland and your case gets transferred out of state, so hopefully it gets looked at quicker. However, what it means is if you're in Kentucky or you're in Iowa, now you might have to wait a little bit longer, because before those were states that were more efficient, and now the backlog might go up a little bit with these out-of-state cases coming in. So many different factors.
All right, we do have another live question. This one says, I was denied in 2015. I ran out of credits and couldn't appeal. I have credits now. Can I appeal now?
Yes. You have a new date first insured for Social Security disability benefits as long as you have earned enough work credits in the last 40 quarters, as long as you've earned 20 quarters and you've earned 20 quarters of coverage in the last 40 quarters, you can reapply. You now have insured status once again. People can have it, lose it. Yes.
All right. There's a lot of conversation going on. So this person commented, I have lupus RA and have been denied 2 times. Now I'm currently going to court for an appeal. It's been over 2 years since I applied and haven't been able to work. So do you have any tips for them as they head into court for their appeal?
Several different things. I mean, especially if you know you're going to go to court. And I always tell people, I'm not a salesman, I'm a lawyer. But if you know you're going to have a hearing with a judge, that's probably a good time to consult with a lawyer. The reason is they're going to make sure that you have all your medical records. They're going to make sure that the ducks are in a row. Hopefully, they're going to collect some statements from your doctors about your lack of functioning. Other things to be aware of if you have a hearing coming up, I would advise that you really start writing down all of your limitations and not just sending it to Social Security, taking it with you to your doctors, making sure that your doctors have an understanding of how you're limited and are including that in your treatment notes can be one of the most helpful things to actually being approved in the long run. So if you have any follow-up questions to that, again, feel free to DM me, but I definitely would engage with a lawyer at this point if you've already received 2 denials on your claim.
So we actually do have another one here. This says, so will a personal injury settlement affect SSDI benefits?
Well, that's a loaded question. So, and maybe you want to jump in because sometimes disability is based on income and sometimes it's not.
Yeah. So there's 2 types of disability benefits that the kind of 2 tree branches that Social Security grants benefits. There's SSDI benefits, which is based on your work history. And then there's SSI benefits, which is not based on the work credits that we're talking about. Instead, it's based on having limited income, limited resources. Now, if you have worked and paid into Social Security, you are covered for Social Security disability insurance. It doesn't matter the size of the settlement or award that Alan gets you. You're still going to be eligible to receive SSD benefits because you could be the wealthiest person in the world. You're going to be able to get that money as long as it's not earned income, but you're not earning that money from working. However, if you don't have enough work credits and the benefit that you're applying for is instead SSI, supplemental security income, then a significant award by a personal injury attorney, a medical malpractice attorney, can wipe out your eligibility for SSI benefits. There's a lot of talk about them raising the resource limits, but if you're a single person and you have more than $2,000 in assets, you're not eligible for SSI. If you're a part of a married couple and you have more than $3,000 in assets, you're not eligible for SSI. So if you have even a minor car crash where Alan's able to put $5,000 in your pocket, that would wipe out SSI until you've spent that money down. So you wouldn't forever be unable to get SSI, but you would be unable to receive it until you had spent that money.
'Cause on that topic, let's assume that we have a catastrophically injured child. I have right now a natural gas explosion case where 2 kids were burnt very severely. They're never going to be able to work. At what point are they eligible for SSI?
So SSI is going to look at the household income. I would imagine that, or household resources. I would imagine that one of the things that you would do would be to set up some sort of special needs trust at the end for the benefit of the child. And there certainly are ways to shield that money to make it clear to Social Security, hey, that money is not for the benefit of the parent who is taking care of the child. However, I also imagine that some of that money that would be received from a catastrophic injury or incident like that is going to be set up to go towards paying for household expenses. Now, that money that goes towards paying for the household expenses, that would be deducted from the SSI check. So depending on the size of it, there are ways to set things up in special need trusts, ABLE accounts, to shield some of that money and keep it from impacting a parent's SSI eligibility or even SSI eligibility for the child. But depending on how much money we're talking about, it might just be that it wipes out SSI.
All right, we do have another question for Alan. So what do I do after a personal injury accident is part 1. And part 2 is what happens if I'm partially at fault for the accident.
Okay, so I'm assuming we're talking about like a car crash here, right?
Sure.
So let's assume we got a scenario where more than one person were to sort of, there's some blame to go around. And you're in a car crash, and the insurance company says, you're 40% at fault. So what happens essentially is in Ohio, you're apportioned the amount of fault that you are to blame. So in other words, say there's a crash, let's say there's a $10 damage. These are just fake numbers because I'm not good at math. But you're 40% to blame. So your potential settlement or your potential award would be reduced by 40%. So essentially, you could get $6 then. Now, here's the issue, though. If you are more than 50.1% to blame, the answer is you could essentially get 0. So that's sort of how that works. You have the person at fault, the other person, has to be more than 50.1%, meaning the majority of at fault. But your potential award or recovery or compensation for the injuries that you got would be reduced by the amount or the percent that you are liable.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
How do you calculate the percentage of fault?
It would be a jury question. So in other words, the jury would hear the facts and they would decide. Now here's what's crazy is these insurance companies nowadays, and I'm talking about you, State Farm, I'm talking about you, Allstate. Look,
Geico.
Yeah, these insurance companies.
Damn gecko. He's cute, but he's a little fucker.
That's right. I wouldn't mind stepping on him. Here's the deal. They want to try to put fault on people that have no fault. So say, there's a stoplight situation where someone runs a red light. I have a case right now where the insurance company is saying, well, they should have foreseen that someone was going to run the red light and stop earlier. Like, this is insane. And this is what's going on in today's world with insurance companies that people need to know about. And so what that means is then our hand is forced. Now we have to file a lawsuit, and that person's claim is now kicked down the road 1-2 years instead of being able to potentially resolve the case in a short time period. It's a shame what's going on. In Ohio, we do not have what we call third-party bad faith, meaning if someone else's insurance company is not being fair to us, we really can't do anything about it. If it's our own insurance company, then we do. And that is the reason why this is happening, because under Ohio law, there's no way to drop the hammer on them.
Okay, we have another live question from TikTok. They want to know, does the local Social Security office review the medical records that are submitted in a disability case?
Great question. Just kind of about the setup of Social Security. No. So every state in the United States has its own, they're called different things in different states, different titles, but basically own agencies that evaluate claims medically for Social Security. So here's the way that it works with a disability application. You file the application. You file it either online. You can go into the office still. Some people choose to do it over the phone. The application is compiled inside of the local Social Security office. However, once they've collected the information and processed it into the system, the file then gets sent to a central body here in Ohio. It's called Disability Determination Services, which is in Columbus. And they're the ones who are actually reviewing the claim and making medical decisions. That's where they process your work history report. That's where they process your function report. That's where the medical records are collected. And that's where not only the adjudicator works from, but that's also where Social Security has medical consultants who then review the medical records, come up with an opinion of what you can or cannot do, and which then gets translated into an award or a denial. Now, after they make that initial decision at the state agency, the claim then gets sent back to the field office where the notices go out to people about whether they were approved or denied. If you appeal, the same process happens again. Your case then gets sent back at the reconsideration claim to that state agency where they work it up again.
And we did just want to remind everyone watching, this is a live episode of the Triple D podcast. So we're going to be posting this episode a little bit later in May, and you can find a lot of great information there. Anywhere you get podcasts or also on our YouTube. Let me see. I think that we have one more question here. And Kennedy and Ivy wants to know, and this kind of segues to our final segment, are those Jack Frost donuts?
Those are Jack Frost donuts. Alan, you devoured yours.
Yeah, I gotta try it here. Let's try it. Here we go. One bite. Everyone knows
get
the
some
rules.
of
We'll
that
determine
cherry.
what it
Get some
finally
of that
is.
cherry.
Is it strawberry? Is it cherry?
He didn't even bite into that.
Oh.
What a weak bite.
So, there's nothing inside yet. I like that first bite, though. You know, unlike you, I'm not a masterful biter. I've seen the podcast, and you really attack that donut.
Like
You
an
attack-
animal.
Yeah.
I pounce.
There we go.
There we go. We got some flavor now. I'm going cherry. Am I wrong?
It's cherry.
All right. See, it had more of a cherry texture than it did a strawberry texture. You know, one question that I always have when you're eating these, oh, see, now it doesn't work. But the donut was like laid up like this. How do you attack this frosting on top without making a total fool of yourself?
Yeah. Well, you know, I know that you would attack that with the tongue. You just go after it.
Oh, yeah.
And I've seen you do
Oh,
it.
yeah.
It's embarrassing in public. It's embarrassing in public.
But the
it's
ladies
tough.
love it.
Yeah. It's tough. You know, PG episode. But I think this might be a little, controversial. You go fork and knife there.
Ooh. Donut with the fork and knife, like the Seinfeld Snickers
That's right.
with the fork
George
and knife.
Costanza.
All right.
I mean, I'm a little more cultured than you, but that's how I feel.
That's right. You're a lot more. Look at you. You're a lot more cultured than me. I'm going to a flower power rally after this. You want to join me?
I'll be there.
So is that all? Is that all we have today? Thank you guys so much for tuning in to a special TikTok live, Facebook live, Triple D podcast. We got a triple dip here today with my good friend and incredible attorney, Alan Tittle of Tittle Perlmuter. I am Michael Liner of Liner Legal, disability wizard extraordinaire, and I'm so grateful that you guys hung out with us for a while.
Yeah, this was awesome, and I'd love to come back and do it again. So, I know. Maybe,
Get in line.
I know there's...
Once was enough.
I hear you. I don't want to overstay my welcome. But, anytime that we can answer, questions of you folks, that's phenomenal. And so, one thing I would suggest is just because you didn't get to ask your question here, send them in. And, I know I would be happy, and I know Michael would be happy to shoot a one-off video to answer these questions and post it on our respective social media accounts. So please, just because you didn't get a question in today, we'd be happy to answer those another time. All right, Alan Tittle, personal injury lawyer.
Liner out.
Thanks for listening to the Triple D Podcast, Donuts, Disability, and Discourse. Rate, subscribe, and tune in next week for more discourse and donuts.